Roots TV Nigeria. I am Oluwatobi Eniton, and welcome to the program What Next Education. To discuss what next in the education sector is the Secretary of Education Secretariat of the Federal Capital Territory Administration, Dr. Bala Mohammed Liman. He will be sharing his thoughts on the education sector, the step taken so far, and what we are to expect in the near future. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell us, the federal government has advocated jail term for parents of children who are not enrolled in school. What is the Federal Capital Territory Administration doing to take out of school children off the street and enroll them in school, and to also make it sustainable so they won't leave?
I think thank you very much, but I think this is something a law that has existed for a while. I think it's more about implementation than anything else. We at the FCTA, we take it very seriously. We have, I think, over 100,000 out-of-school children, so we take this as a very serious issue. Education is extremely important in any country, because without an education citizen, you cannot move forward. We will try and demonstrate. We'll have to look at the federal government's law and try and demonstrate it locally. But together with UBEB and SED, we're trying to ensure that we have fewer out-of-school children on the streets. So it's something that the FCT administration takes very, very seriously.
Okay. And in terms of funding, do you think the federal government has done so well?
Well, you know that education is a responsibility of all three tiers of government, not just the federal government. The local governments and the states have the responsibility of the primary and secondary school, at least up to junior secondary school level, which they are supported by the federal government. But really, it's really a state responsibility. So the federal government will do its own bit. We at the FCTA level and the state level will do our bit. But the problem with funding is that with every developing country, you never have enough money to carry out your developmental plans. And I think that's where we are now when it comes to education. So we have serious challenges with funding, and we're trying to see how we can find some kind of sustainable level of funding that will ensure that the education sector itself is well funded, so that we can provide the necessary infrastructure, the number of teachers that are required to make sure that our students are well trained. The Minister of Education had a seminar last year on sustainable financing, and the communique is not yet out, but once it comes out, we'll look at it and see how we can key to some of the ideas that the federal government is advocating.
Okay, coming down to the Federal Capital Territory, we know basic education is said to be free. Well, there are still some disparities in that line.
Your question?
Yes.
I think the problem is
yes,
the assumption that education is free gives this idea that everything is free. What is free is the teaching aspect of education. The uniforms, the books, and so on are the responsibility of parents, and I think that's what we're trying to educate and sensitize parents about. Education for all is a responsibility of all, not just the government, but also parents, to ensure that their students get the best quality education. So what happens in many instances is that in collaboration with PTAs, they assess, principals of schools and the agencies assess how much is required for uniforms and for books, and that's some of the charges that you hear about. I admit that yes, we have instances where some of the charges are way above what has been agreed on, and even at the last meeting with the principals, I told them that we cannot be seen to be overcharging parents, because this sort of keeps them from putting their children in school. But education that is free is not necessarily free in that sense. It's free in that the children will come to school, they won't pay any school fees up to the junior secondary school level at the end of JS3, and then but uniforms and books is the responsibility of the parents of those children.
Okay, that is where the challenge is, because we know out of 2 children, the North constitutes a larger population to out-of-school children in Nigeria. So what is the government doing? Because the previous administration have created Almajiri schools to enroll these children. Well, we see that it has not been sustainable. So what efforts are they making so that parents will not be sanctioned and children will be able to get to school as well?
I think the problem with I think it's not just about setting up, establishing Almajiri schools. I think the problem with education in the North is something that has been ongoing, has been eroding for a number of years. It's actually the responsibility, I believe strongly that it's the responsibility of the state governments to ensure that even if there are no Almajiri schools, the normal basic education schools, parents of students make sure that they go to those schools. And I think, like I said earlier, it's about enforcement of the law that already exists in most states. In my state, which is Niger, I know for a fact that at the local education authority level, there are laws that ensure that students must be put in school. And I know people who work in those agencies who have told me that they've arrested parents and taken them to court for not sending their kids to school. And in many instances, it's not because of, it's just because they think that they can provide an additional labor hand on the farms for them. So we have to find a way of trying to encourage them to make sure that there is a benefit with these children being in school rather than them being on the farms. Because even if they're going to be on the farm, if they're well educated, it's easier for them to make good transactions when they're growing up. So it's something that is still evolving, and something that both the state government and the FCT itself are looking at and trying to ensure that we find ways that makes it easy for parents to send their children to school, and then also ensuring that the students stay in school when they're sent there. It takes us back to the issue of the federal government's homegrown school feeding, which is supposed to be an incentive for children to be put in school, and it's worked in so many states. And the FCT itself is planning to roll out its own in the third term of this year, this session. So hopefully when the kids go back to school in April, we'll have started the homegrown school feed, and we hope that this will encourage parents to send their children to school. So these are the sort of things that we're looking at, but it's a very difficult task because our population growth is growing rapidly, and this is affecting our ability to actually provide the necessary infrastructure for the students that are coming into the educational system.
Okay, now where do you see Nigeria's education sector in the next 5 years, putting the Federal Capital Territory in focus?
That's a really tough one, because like I said, our population growth rate is massive, and this is impacting on our ability to provide the necessary infrastructure to ensure that we have enough classrooms and enough teachers in our schools. So we have that huge challenge, and when the Minister of Education made a presentation to the National Economic Council, he indicated that even for the next 2 years, between this year and next year, the education system needs about 10.2 trillion naira just to get to a certain level that is manageable. So you can imagine if that is what we need for the next, because that's more than the budget of Nigeria as it is now. So if that's what we need for the next 2 years, what can you imagine what we need for the next 5 years? And so this is going back to that challenge of sustainable funding. So without funding of any form, if we cannot meet our funding needs, then we're going to have problems. Here at the FCT, what we've done now is we've come up with a cost of children. We're trying to come up with a cost of educating a child figure. And this will give us an idea about what we require per year to train children. And then we'll have to look at what portion of it will be borne by government, what portion will be borne by parents, and what other portion we will get from partner agencies. And that should help us at least understand exactly where we'll be in the next 1 year, 2 years, and 5 years, like you said. So we are working on it, but it's a very challenging, very challenging thing.
Okay, so what should the government take a cue from in order to advance the sector, develop the sector, and even become like a role model to some African countries? Well,
it's interesting because yesterday I was talking with a couple of my directors, and one of the things that we came up with was the fact that we probably needed to look at a system like Singapore, that in 45 years they came from a highly uneducated, illiterate population to a 90% literacy rate population, because they had targets. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to set targets, 10-year targets, 15-year targets, where we know where we want to be. And once we can do that, then we should be able to come at least see some appreciable improvement in the level of education as it is now. But unfortunately, because over the years, I think in the last maybe 30, 40 years, we've had policies that keep on evolving. You know, we had the normal from 1 to 5 initially, then we had the 6-3-4 system, which itself was corrupted, and now the university system is being bogged down by the number of students that are applying for JAM, and the ones that are able to get in and the ones that are not. So we have all these challenges, and they keep on evolving, and we're trying to, because we're not being proactive, rather we're being reactive. We try to fix the problem when it appears, rather than thinking forward and seeing what the problem might be. And I think until we understand that aspect and we sit down and say, okay, where do we want to be in 30 years? Where are we now? What are the challenges we will see at every point? It will remain difficult for us to actually make any kind of significant improvement in our education system. But I think it's something that can be done. And I believe that the Minister of Education has done a very good job in some of the policies, the plans that he's rolled out. He's It's now left for the states to domesticate them. And I think at the last, maybe at the end of the year, they are going to declare a state of emergency in education. I think the states need to do that too, and I believe that the FCTA too will do that at the appropriate time.
Okay, perhaps the state of emergency, would there be need for foreign aid to help Nigeria?
That's more of a political question, I think, more than a question that I can answer myself. It depends on how the government wants to approach funding of that. We already have development partners who are here, who are helping in the education sector. But if we want to make it a wholesale government-to-government kind of relationship, then I think that's left to the federal government to decide exactly where they want to be and which states are willing to key into this, to that initiative.
Okay, and we most sincerely thank you so much for your time. And I have been speaking to the Secretary of the Education Secretariat of the Federal Capital Territory Administration, Dr. Bala Mohammed Liman, who has shared his thoughts on the education sector, the way forward, and what the government should take a cue from. Well, we'll leave it here for now. Until next time on What Next Education, I am Oluwatobi Enison for Roots TV, Nigeria.